On today's program, Senior Agriculturist Becky Carroll has tips on fertilizing blackberries. OSU Stillwater Campus Horticulturist Kenny White shows a beautiful edible ground cover. Turfgrass specialist Justin Moss keeps the Bermudagrass in check. Former host Ray Campbell plants some peanuts. And Barbara Brown prepares a spinach, mushroom, and apple salad. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Nursery, Tulsa's source for great gardens, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
Today we're at the Cimarron Valley Research Station at Perkins, and we're at the blackberry plots, and it's time to apply our first application of fertilizer. And that's done at bloom time. We do a split application at bloom and then one again after harvest time. The first application of fertilizer is going to help with total production, and it's going to help with berry size and also with plant growth. The second application we make after harvest is going to help to grow those new primocanes for the following year's growth and for the fruiting floricanes for that year. Now, the amount that we use on the fertilizer kind of depends on what type of fertilizer you're using, your soil test, and some things like that. So if you've done a soil test, you'll know exactly what type of nutrients you need to apply. And it may just be that you need to apply nitrogen, which could be in the form of something like urea, or you may need some phosphorus, which would be like this 046O, or potassium, which might be this 0060. And so today we're actually going to be using a 1313, which includes all three of those elements. Now, the amount you use is going to be dependent on the fertilizer, like I said. The urea is a concentration 46% nitrogen. The complete fertilizer has 13% nitrogen. So you can see the amount of nitrogen or fertilizer that we're going to use is dependent on the type of fertilizer that we choose. And this is more concentrated nitrogen, and it's not mixed with other nutrients, so there's less that we need to apply. And for blackberries, our applications, they need about 0.4 ounces per plant at each time, and that's of actual nitrogen. I have a brand new fact sheet that Kim and Sarah put together this last year, and it is 6259 small fruit maintenance, and it has detailed table of exactly how much fertilizer to apply for grapes, brambles like blackberries and raspberries, kiwi, strawberries, and several other small fruits. But it tells you the type of fertilizer that you're using, plus the amount that you need to apply in ounces. So today we're going to use the 1313, and I measured out what 3 ounces would look like. And so this is my 3 ounce line right here. It's almost a half of a cup. Now this is going to vary depending on what type of fertilizer you use, so 3 ounces won't always be this amount. Some are smaller, so it's going to fill up less space. Some have bigger granules, so it'll be larger. But this is the amount that we're going to apply to the blackberries. We'll be applying it just at the base of the plant. We don't want it really to be on the foliage because it can burn the plant. and we don't like it right up next to those canes. We just want it around the perimeter. Ideally, we'll be applying this right before a rain. A day or two before a rain would be good. If you don't have rain in the forecast, then you want to water it in well. And that's way you're not going to lose any of the nitrogen to volatility. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go out and apply our first application of the season. So this is bloom time for when we apply our first application. And then we'll come back after harvest and apply the rest of our fertilizer needs.
Here at the Price Garden at Oklahoma State University, we have an interesting ground cover that we use as part of the Ranchers Club. We have a strawberry, and it's an ornamental strawberry. This strawberry is called Rainbow Treasure, and it produces 3 different colored flowers on the same group of plants. You can see a white, which is the normal color that you would expect to see on a strawberry. You see a little bit lighter pink and a much larger flower from this one, and then it goes to a darker pink, more of a hot pink color. And all of these are from the same cultivar of plant. And it's a really interesting plant that can make a nice ground cover in your yard, and it can also produce an edible fruit that you can use in the house. The strawberries that you get from this plant are a little smaller than the average strawberry, but you get the dual purpose of the beautiful flowers, which can highlight your flower bed. These strawberries and some of the other plants, we have rosemary, which the Ranchers Club uses quite often in their recipes in the kitchen. I'll bring out basil later this summer that they'll also use a lot of, and other herbs from here in the garden. So if you're up on Oklahoma State campus, drop by the Ranchers Club and try some of our food.
So here we are in the springtime, and a lot of times you'll see Bermudagrass start to green up, and sometimes that's great for our turf grass lawn, but other times not so great for maybe our landscape beds, sidewalks, or like here where we have some pavers out. And Bermudagrass is pretty interesting grass. It can actually grow above the ground, can reach out through stolons like we see right here, and it can reach down somewhere else and root down and form a new plant and just keep growing and growing and reaching out above the ground. It can also develop underground stems called rhizomes, and here we see an example of what Bermudagrass can do below the ground. And so these roots will develop, and then below the ground there'll be a stem develop, a rhizome, and then at a node there it will come up and form a new plant. And so this Bermudagrass plant can spread above the ground and below the ground. It makes it very difficult to control. It makes it great if we're trying to grow in a lawn, but very difficult to control in landscape beds, gardens, and sidewalks and pavers. So what can we do to control this problem? Well, there's lots of things we can do, and one of those things that we can do is just do some mechanical control, maybe using an edger or something like that. So you can take along the edge of your sidewalk or the edge of your bed or the edge of the pavers and run that steel edger and actually physically cut the stolons, and it will go down deep into the soil and physically cut the rhizomes as well. So that can help, but you'll notice probably after about 2 or 3 weeks it'll happen again. The Bermudagrass will start growing, it'll be active again, and you'll have to continue doing that edging time and time again throughout the whole growing season. Now another thing you can do is you can go with the chemical control. So like I have a couple of examples of chemicals here. One is glyphosate. You'll see trade names like Roundup, and there's lots of other names out there that you see in the store, but basically this glyphosate product can be mixed up, say just in a little 1-gallon hand sprayer. You just put in, depending on the formulation that you purchase, most of the times it'll be like a 41% glyphosate product, meaning the bottle contains actually 41% of the glyphosate. So in that case, you mix up 2 to 3 ounces per gallon of water, and then you would just come along the edge and spray that. And you have to be very careful, because whatever that product touches, it's going to die. So it can harm maybe this vine here too as well. So you'd have to be very careful, make sure it's not windy, and only spray where you want to actually kill active growing vegetation. There are other products like glufosinate, phenoxyprop, and also triclopyr can be used. Just have to make sure you buy the right product for the right purpose, read the label. Sometimes these products are not specifically for residential yards, sometimes they are. So just consult with your county extension educator and they'll help you figure out which product to use. Or if you want, just go with the old standard glyphosate and that will work quite well. So continuing talking about how to keep Bermudagrass out of your landscape beds, here's a really good example of how you can use an actual physical barrier for your landscape bed. So here there's just some still edging you see right here, and that'll help keep the Bermudagrass away from your landscape bed. And also what's also very helpful is having a good 3-inch layer of a mulch in your landscape bed. And that really helps to keep all the weeds out, including Bermudagrass. And you can even see here where they've even sprayed a non-selective herbicide like a glyphosate to form an additional barrier to keep the grass farther away from the edge here. Other things that you'll see, like maybe if you have a new bed, is maybe some landscape fabric or some plastic that you can put down. And so, for instance, here in this bed, if we were going to plant as new, we could get the soil prepared, maybe put down a layer of this fabric or this plastic, and then put the mulch on top of that, and that just gives you an extra physical barrier to keep that Bermudagrass out of the bed. Now, none of these are perfect though. The Bermudagrass is very persistent and aggressive, and so this is something that you probably can't just use 1 or 2 or 3 of these techniques, but actually everything. You'd have to try everything to keep it out of your bed and off your sidewalks and things like that. The other thing to remember is if you put this fabric down and say you want to plant a new ornamental plant here, if you dig up the soil and get some soil on top of this landscape fabric, there's a chance that there could be some Bermudagrass rhizomes in there, and before you know it, you've got Bermudagrass all in your bed again. So you have to be very careful about soil sanitation and keeping things really clean, and try not to introduce Bermudagrass in there. If we wanted to till up the soil first, and there's already Bermudagrass here, again, remember about the rhizomes, and whenever you chop up the Bermudagrass, you're always spreading those rhizomes, and it's actually like spreading the grass throughout your whole landscape area. So if you're going to do that, it has to be really a deep tillage where you're burying those rhizomes deep down into the soil so they cannot emerge up through at the top. Do these things and you might have a good chance to keep Bermudagrass out of your landscape bed.
You know, each year I like to plant something a little bit different, a little bit unusual in the garden, something I may not have tried before, or if I have tried it before, it's been a while since I've done that. And I do that just sort of for the fun of it, but also to try to interest children in the garden. And there are a lot of fun things that we can put in the garden that are interesting to grow, that children really get involved in. And so one of the things I'm planting today in my home garden, just for just a few rows, is something that hopefully will get my grandchildren later on a little bit interested in watching these grow and produce, and that is the peanut. Oftentimes we don't think about growing peanuts in the home garden, but actually they're a very good plant to grow. You know, peanuts are well adapted to Oklahoma. We grow a lot of them in the southwest part of the state, down in the Caddo County area around Hinton and Fort Cobb and in that area. So peanuts are well adapted to Oklahoma. Peanuts are a very nutritious plant that is very, very versatile in the way it can be used. I'm sure you're familiar with what we call the roasting peanut, which is the larger peanut that you see at many of the sports events. This is typically a peanut called a Valencia. And Valencia sometimes also are called jumbo peanuts, and they are also well adapted to Oklahoma, and one of the ones that we grow here. The Valencia has a rather large nut inside, as you can see, and as I said, this is the one that you typically see roasted and in ballparks and sporting events and those types of venues. Then the other type of peanut that I'll be planting today in the garden is a smaller peanut called the Spanish peanut. It's probably the most popular one grown in Oklahoma. It's a very versatile peanut. It's high in oil content, has a lot of flavor to it, and is the one you usually see in mixed nuts and in candies, and can also be roasted in the shell, much like the Valencia can. So today we're going to be planting a few of each types of these peanuts. Now what I've done is already fixed up my bed. Peanuts like a really loose soil. As the sandier the soil, the better. And because my soil is not real sandy, at least I have a lot of organic matter in it. Also keep in mind that peanuts are pretty heavy feeders, particularly of phosphorus and calcium. So we probably need to fortify that soil a little bit with some nutrients. And so today I'm going to be using actually two choices. One thing we can do is put a heavy application of just 10-20-10 fertilizer, because it is high in phosphorus, it has some calcium in it, it's not very high in nitrogen, and peanuts really don't use a lot of nitrogen because they are a legume very similar to clover in appearance, and so we really can get by with a fairly low nitrogen soil. But I'm going to give a liberal application of the plants of some 10-20-10 fertilizer, or 12-12-12 would work. Kind of mix it into the soil really well and get ready then to plant my peanuts as soon as I get this mixed in. Another choice that you might want to use if you don't want to use the 10-20-10 is simply bone meal. Bone meal, of course, is also very high in phosphorus, provides some calcium, and would be an excellent choice to use in the row also for the production of peanuts in the garden. And so I'm also, in some other rows, I'll put just a liberal application of bone meal, same way I did the 10-20-10. Mix it in very well, just to get it incorporated somewhat into the soil. Peanuts really are a crop that requires quite a bit of space. And while I don't have a lot of space in this little raised bed, I'm going to plant them a little bit closer than you normally would, certainly in a commercial production. But I'm going to plant my peanuts about 2.5 inches deep, 1.5 to 2 inches deep, spaced about 8 inches apart. Then I'll come back when I get my others planted and cover these to a depth of about 1.5 inches. When these peanuts come up, I'll probably will go ahead and thin those to only 1 peanut per hill. Peanuts were originally a plant found and discovered in the old world South America countries. They came to Africa probably by the Portuguese traders, and then were brought to America to the south by the African slaves as they came in early in the history of our country. So they have a very rich heritage in our country, and are a very, very important, economically important crop of the South. I'm going to cover these peanuts about 1.5 inches to 2 inches deep. I want to firmly tamp the soil on the top just to hold in what little bit of moisture is in the bottom of that row, and also to keep the peanut from drying out from the ambient air as well. Spanish peanut will take about 95 days. The Valencia peanut will take about 125 days to mature. As they begin to grow, they will shoot up, they will put up a clump of foliage, like I said, much like a clover plant. Will send out little pegs from the base of the plant. These pegs go down into the soil, and that's what produces the peanut. So it's important to keep soil mounded around the base of the peanut as they grow, to give some soil for those pegs to go down into. Then as we get into the fall, maybe late September or early October, we'll see these peanut plants begin to yellow. They will begin to die down, and we'll know the peanuts are ready to dig. Another thing about peanuts are that they are not very drought resistant. They do enjoy a lot of moisture. So unless we have sufficient rainfall throughout the season, you'll want to be sure and keep your peanut planting irrigated to give it a continual growth. Now, the last thing I want to do on my peanuts planting today is to give them a little bit of protection from some of my harvesting friends that really don't garden at my house. By that I mean some things like some squirrels. I live in an urban area with a lot of trees, and so I know from past experience when I planted peanuts that by tomorrow, or maybe within 2 days, there's going to be squirrels in here digging these peanuts out and eating them. And so I'm just going to put a loose floating row cover over the peanut bed. It will be loose enough to where it can float and have some space The peanuts will have enough time to get up 2 or 3 inches tall before I take this row cover off. By that time, the nut will be completely gone from the soil and the squirrels won't really bother it. So I'm gonna give it a lot of float here, very, very loose. And then after they get, like I said, 2 or 3 inches tall, I'll just come in and take that row cover off. So I hope that you try some fun things in the garden to try to get children interested. And quite frankly, I'm very interested in this as well. I just enjoy watching them grow. And also, speaking of children in the garden and children's activities for the garden, I want to invite you to check out our website at the Botanic Garden at OSU and come out and bring your children or your grandchildren out to enjoy some of the many, many children's activities in the garden. Bring your kids out, let them enjoy the garden, let them explore, let them have fun, let them see the excitement of watching things grow and enjoying it as they grow. It's a very good way to teach science to young people. It's a very good way just to keep your kids interested and involved and have a lot of good outdoor activity, as well as enjoying the freshness of the air and the season. So I hope you enjoy your garden this season and try a few peanuts in the garden.
Springtime always makes me want spring greens, and today I'm doing a spinach, mushroom, and apple salad, which kind of is a crossover season because the apples we don't usually think of as much with spring. So I've got 6 ounces of fresh spinach. You can use baby spinach, you can use regular spinach, and just tear it into smaller pieces if the leaves get really large. I also have 8 ounces of mushrooms that are sliced. Make sure you clean them well. The amount of chunkiness of the slice is totally up to you. I notice that sometimes if you buy them commercially, the slices are thicker. You can also just clean them, slice yourself. Again, it's totally up to you. Just make sure that when you clean them, you do it with either a slightly damp towel or a dry paper towel or a mushroom brush, because they soak up water so much because they are like sponges that if you let them soak or actually wash them in water, they get all that water in them and they're not as good anymore. Next thing I'm going to put in here is 1 red apple. Now I chose a red apple because I wanted to leave some of the color in there. This is really, there's not a lot of color going in here besides the color green and beige from the mushrooms. So we're going to leave the skin on our apple. You could use a yellow one, whatever you happen to have. Just try and leave as much color as you can. For that reason, I also chose a red onion, looking for a little bit more attractiveness in the final dish than we might have otherwise. And then I've got 1 egg. Now this is 1 egg that's been chopped. It's a hard cooked egg, so you can do this a couple of days ahead of time, have it ready to go. And so this becomes, or could become, particularly if you added at least 1 more egg to it, a main dish kind of salad. Now we're just going to have those in there ready to go while we make a dressing for it. I've got 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Now I'm going to use, this one is a mild flavored olive oil, but this is a kind of salad where you could use something that's got a lot more boost of flavor to it. I'm also adding 2 tablespoons of cider vinegar. In this case, you could use a champagne vinegar. You can even use a balsamic vinegar. And 1/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon, let me get my things in order, 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper, and about 1/8 of a teaspoon of soy sauce. Now that's not very much soy sauce. It's not going to taste like it's got an Asian influence, but it does give it a little bit more salt flavor to it. Also gives it a little bit more color and just enough flavor to it that it makes it interesting. Whisk those together. This is a temporary emulsion, so don't anticipate you can do that before you do all the rest of the things, or it's just going to come back apart on you and you're going to have to whisk it again. And then it's simply a matter of tossing it. Now, as I said, you could add more eggs to this. You could also add some grilled chicken to it. You could add some tuna to it, either grilled or out of a can that you've drained. It's very flexible, like all salads are. The concept here is that we just want to toss it so that all of the salad ingredients get coated with some of the dressing so that you have flavor everywhere. And once you do that tossing, because you could do the layering a little bit ahead of time for some of the ingredients, the apple won't hold well, but you could substitute grapes and then you could do a lot of that well ahead of time. But once you put the dressing on it, the acid in the dressing is going, and the salt and so on, are going to start making the greens wilt. So this becomes a terrific salad. I hope you'll give this one a try. It's very refreshing. It could be a lunch salad, it could be a dinner salad, or if you want to serve smaller plates of it, put it as a side salad too. I hope you'll give it a try. It's spinach, mushroom, and apple salad. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.
Here's one of the great gardening activities coming up in Oklahoma. Next week, we travel to Oklahoma City Zoo and Botanical Garden to look at a new water conservation demonstration exhibit. Former host Steve Dobbs has a tour of a special garden on the OSU Stillwater campus. And Ray Campbell controls the insects and diseases on our fruit trees. Join us in for more TV you'll grow to love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society.